To build a more powerful backswing, I want you to consider the elements of hinging, swinging, and rotating. As it relates to hinging, this is one of the things a lot of people have a hard time doing because their hinge sequence is either incorrect or out of sequence. So I like to think about things logically in life and realize that in golf, we have this basic relationship where the golf club is sitting on the ground and we need to get it up in the air, off the ground, over top of our right shoulder. In essence, we're taking the club from a low position up to a high position. Well, imagine if your phone was ringing and it was sitting on your desk at work. You have to get that phone from a low point to a high point up to your ear. How would you do it? Well, the first thing you should do is bend your elbow. That's going to start creating height. After the elbow bends, the wrist will follow suit, and now you're talking on the phone. So a proper hinge sequence to go from low to high is an elbow bend followed by a wrist action. Elbow bend followed by a wrist action. So if we start to apply this to how we're going to play golf, the first thing I want you to be able to do is put the golf club in your right hand and start feeling some creation of angles. Let the elbow bend, let the wrist follow. That's the hinging. Once we create a hinge, now we need to create a swing. And this is where the club head's moving away from the ball due to the swinging of our arms. Well, if I'm swinging, I go up and down with a hinge, I add a swing, and now you can see the handle of the club is swinging past my right thigh. The handle is close, the club head's away, and I should have a little bit of space between the inner portion of my upper arm and my rib cage. That's going to give me a hinge and a swing with a little bit of width. You've heard about width before as it relates to power. That's important. If I was going to try and feel the same thing from a left arm perspective, I can now hinge the left wrist up and down, and I can swing the left arm across, just like so. Hinging and swinging. So what I like to do is break the golf swing down between left-handed and right-handed movements, trying to feel a sense of independence and then putting those movements back together. Hinge up and down, feel some hinging and swinging. Hinge up and down, feel some hinging and swinging. Once you get to this first segment, the handle's close, the club head's away, and you should have about the width of a fist in between your body in the inner portion of that upper arm. Once we create the hinge and the swing, now we have to create a sense of rotation. But our first rotation is going to occur with our arm action. So looking from this down the target line perspective, if I just hinge and swing and keep on going, you can see how the shaft gets very vertical, very steep. One of the important things as it relates to ball striking is swinging your golf club on plane. That means keeping the shaft at about its original shaft angle from the ground up to the top. So once you feel hinging and swinging, you're going to take this left forearm and you're actually going to rotate it, in this case to the right. And you can see how nicely the shaft actually goes back on a nice tilted plane, matching its original position. From here we're going to talk about rotation of the body, the torso and the hips. A lot of times when people think about turning, they think about turning their left shoulder behind the golf ball. But very often this leads to what I call a false turn, where they more or less just lean to the right and the shoulders don't really wind up at all. So instead of trying to turn your left shoulder behind the ball, think more of rotating or pivoting your chest or sternum. A great way to feel this is to wind up to the top and then turn and look up to the clouds. As you do this, turn your sternum a little bit more, trying to get it to face the sky. If you look back down towards the ball, you should really notice that the right shoulder feels very deep and rotated behind the head. The left shoulder's under the chin. That's going to give you more of a true turn. Once the shoulders are wound up, now it's time to rotate these hips a little bit. A lot of times in golf, people feel like they have to keep their hips locked, rotating hardly at all, and then wind the shoulders on top. The reality is most golfers aren't flexible enough to make that move produce power. So what I want is more of a free hip release back and through. A great drill to feel this is to actually stand here in your posture and imagine that you have a pulley in your left and right hand. Imagine that pulley system attached to the bottom of a door and start moving the arms back and forth, feeling some rotation or swivel in your hips. You notice the right hip turns back, then the left hip turns back. The right hip turns back, then the left hip turns back. That's going to give you a centered turn, pure rotation, and no side-to-side movement whatsoever. That's actually a critical component to getting a nice consistent bottom to your swing arc. So if you put all this together, what do we have? We have hinging, swinging, and rotating. A left arm rotation, a shoulder rotation, and also a free hip rotation as well. Set up to your golf ball, relax those joints. Feel some hinge, feel some swing. Handle close, club head away. A little bit of width in there. Left forearm rotates the shaft on the plane. Free turn with the shoulders, free wind up at the hips, and you'll have enough power to hit that golf ball pretty far from tee to green.